Hello, I am Mariano Gutierrez Alarcón and welcome to the 12th Man Academy, the show that asks the questions we believe the fans want to know about football. Joining me for this series is well-known and passionate manager Gus Poyet and our voice of the fans, long-suffering supporter Stephen Brown. Together, we will get inside the pitch and hope to answer your doubts about managing at the top end of the game, while we get the inside track of being a top-level football manager. In each episode, we get a better understanding of the thoughts, the decision-making, and the philosophies of a top-level coach, from picking a club captain to tactics and team identity as we connect the fans to the manager. In this series, we reference to past events as we use examples that were happening in the football world at the time we recorded this podcast. In this episode, we discuss psychology and the coaching in youth football development. Hello everyone, we have today a very special edition. It's our first guest in our podcast. So we are here with Gus. Hello Gus.
Hello Mariano, hello boys.
Hello Stephen.
Hello fellas, how you doing?
And hello Chris. How you doing? You are new to our podcast. We give you a very warm welcome. How you doing, Chris?
I'm not bad, thanks. I'm not bad. I'm enjoying the lovely temperatures here in Spain and not complaining much about it.
Just for everyone to know, we invite Chris. We would like him to tell us a bit about him and what he does, and then we crack on with our new episode, which is an experiment, and we hope it goes well. Chris, tell us.
All your Chris, CV first.
Yeah, no pressure, lads, no pressure. There's a final of the Champions League. Just put it in the top corner, no pressure. So my name's Kristopher O'Hare. I am a sports psychologist and a coach. I have a little bit of a different experience and path to most people in my position, as that I decided I was coaching in Korea at the time after coaching in China and a few other places, and I decided to come to Spain in order to differentiate myself from the crowd. The idea was to come here and try to understand football from a different perspective, of which I definitely achieved. I came to Spain, spent 3 years in Castellon, a local club here, which is equivalent to something like Middlesbrough. And then after that, worked at a local club, which was a project mainly based around earning my qualifications here, but also at the same time challenging myself in an environment that would be very much expanding my capacity to deal with people of all different kinds of cultures, which I previously done in Korea, but I think is an incredibly important part of football, especially in modern day football. After that year, one of my players did very well, was spotted by the Spanish selection. As a result, some of my games were scouted. Villarreal came calling, and of course, I didn't say no. My first year was spent in the under-12, what we call Alevin art team, in which we had a really great year, in which we were performing well above expectations, and also at the same time created a team that was collectively perhaps much more than the sum of its parts in certain ways. After all, we need to remember that Villarreal is a club based in a town and our catchment area is very, very small compared to Valencia, compared to Barcelona, Madrid, and other places of this ilk. We got to the semi-final in the biggest under-12 tournament in the world, a tournament called Promeses, or Promises, if you want to say it in Valencian, in Catalan. And it was a fantastic year in which I was able to really foment what I do, which is based around sports psychology and coaching, and doing the two in unison in a very practical, hands-on, non-fluff type manner. And then from that, I've been promoted up to the under 16 and under 18 teams.
Fantastic. So basically, when we spoke before doing the podcast, and you told me about your experience that you just shared with us, one thing that attracts me the most, as you know, in our podcast, we try to see football and to learn about football in a different way. We want to show with the professionals that work in football to tell us the fans, how does it works, for us to understand better what happening, because in this particular case, and what attracts me most for inviting you was your experience with under 16s, under 18s in a professional setup, and basically how little we know about young players more often now coming into professional football, and what's the path of a footballer in the early stages of their career, transition from one to another, and to start of how do you train a kid in order to become a professional footballer? What's the conditions as a coach you have to consider when you train people who are not there yet?
Yeah, so I think something that perhaps Gus will have a really good idea of is, and I hope that he can expand on this, is we need to always breathe into them the reality that is football. And the reality of football is competitiveness is at the core of everything. Competitiveness, desire, and overall those mental attributes that we can go into talking about mental toughness, which is a word that I absolutely despise because it doesn't really mean anything. But those attributes that differentiate the 99.9% from the 0.001%. And Gus will know because he's been in this type of training sessions or atmosphere. It's very obvious who's got the appetite and who doesn't. So I think more than anything, if you're going to look at what the building blocks are, I'd say appetite, desire, competitivity, and an attitude that can bring forward those technical abilities. Because I remember in that year I took out when I was coaching with the local team, I coached one kid who was quite frankly frightening in his ability. Better than players I seen last season at the tournament that was the top tournament throughout the entire country. This kid, but he just had the worst attitude you've ever seen. And I think that throughout that as a coach, if you can't coach somebody, well, the rest is irrelevant.
For you to know, Chris, I think Stephen and Mariano maybe they know. I cannot coach kids. I think coaching kids is an ability, it's a quality. You have to have certain qualities to be able to coach kids. I have a different character. I'm maybe too quick into the first team. So I didn't try the patience, the way of dealing with a kid, taking it slowly, understanding that maybe some people takes a little bit longer, or some people that you think is not going to make it, then slowly start, growing up, and for whatever reason. I think what you said, and I want to ask you a question is, did you see anywhere in Spain or, where you worked previously that there is a tendency on the academies to train certain number of players in a different way? Those special ones that we think they're going to get in there, and we're giving the extra bit separate from the main group. They train with the main group, but then a small group have a special treatment, we can say, or special training.
Actually, no. No, I haven't seen. I throughout what I'm aware of, what I've seen here in Spain, and what I'm aware of the many different clubs here in Spain, the system is very equal in so much as that you don't, whether it might be whether you go to play away in different pitches or so on, you very rarely see any sort of specialized training. It's very cohesive and collective. So in that regard, I think that Spanish
What
players,
I like is so many rumors. I mean, they told me, I can
yeah,
say, when I was in Sunderland or when I was in other clubs, they were saying, oh, because we're making a program to make sure that those ones that we think that they're going to be really top, we're going to do this and that and this and that. And then it happened.
yeah, I know. For example, there are some clubs in England who have a selected group of players, and then those players can go up to the first team, and then there's a coach that works with them. I'm aware of that. However, within the Spanish system, it's not very common. There are pathways created for players whereby they will be playing higher echelons. So, for example, maybe a 16-year-old. There's a 16-year-old at the moment playing in Barcelona. Yamal, I think his name is. He's a left winger. He will have had a pathway whereby at all times he was playing with an older group of players. However, special attention, honestly, I do not think it works that way, because I think what they're trying to do at all times is ensure that you're being taught in the same way as the vision of the club.
Mm-hmm.
And if one coach is paying special attention to a player, perhaps they won't be learning the collectivism that they want within the pitch. I don't know whether that's good or bad, because within the Spanish system, I think when you look at it, when you look at the national team, when they, their ability to maintain the ball, their ability to conserve the ball, their ability to filter balls and progress lines is incredible. However, do they have someone you can argue is a great striker? No. Do they have someone who you can argue who's the next generation of Puyol? No. Do they have someone who you can stick in centre mid and they can pop balls around the corner and beat that press? 100%. So I think that maybe that's something that's going to change, but at the moment that's not the case.
I think that's a natural one. I make an example, Mariano and Steven. I didn't when I was young. I competed with a striker when I was young in the under 13, under 14 in my team in Uruguay. And the other striker went ahead of me and I was behind. I was always with my age. And this guy was always ahead of me, until we get to the first team. And he gets 6 months before me. And then I have a quite good career. And he had a less good career, we can say. What it looks to me at that time that for him it was better. It was competing with a stronger player, with bigger players, playing with better players at that age, early age. I didn't have that. And then, it didn't influence in my career.
There is a whole theory in education that when you put a kid with older people, it tends to undermine the development.
Yeah.
And when you put a strong kid, a weak kid with smaller kids, it tends to build their confidence more. For example, that every year you get into school, but if you're born just in between the 2 years, you are too young to be in first grade, but too old to be in first grade. Normally, what would I recommend, depending on the personality of the kid, is that if it's shy or it's a bit quiet, is to actually to slow down the process and let him be the older within the group, because that will build his confidence.
Yeah, 100%. It's like in Norway, they have a split system whereby within the age group, if you're born in the first 6 months and if you're born in the last 6 months, because I'm sure you're aware of this, and I'm sure this is why you're saying it. The majority of Premier League footballers are born in the beginning of their academic year, and as a result, they're compounding always, because they're always picked first, they're always the fastest, they're always the most able.
The strongest,
Yeah.
Steven, you're quiet so far.
Oh, I'm enjoying myself.
I listening.
I am listening.
He's thinking about himself when he was young.
Well, football's lost, say. No, I think with the two of you at different ends of the spectrum in terms of coaching now, with that, and Gus taking you back to a club coach manager, what I'd like to understand is the cohesion of a club. Now we have directors of football. We've talked about this before. You're a manager. There's now coaches. We're told, or we read, that there's paths set for clubs. The director of football, so that each level will play in the style of that team. Is that true? It's something that I've heard about, especially at Spurs.
Me, I have only my first team and the second team at Brighton. Never again. Okay, that was set by me with Tony Bloom, and we decided that the first team and the second team, we play the basics of the game. They were similar. We didn't play the same, but the basics were similar. Then the rest of the team, no. Sunderland, I didn't, and Greece and Spain, no. I think that everybody wants to do that because of Barcelona and Ajax, but I don't know, Chris, how many you know that they do it. Me, I don't. I didn't.
I think that the idea is a little bit of a fairy tale, because I think that what happens is the identity and culture are very different to style. So identity and culture, we've got identity is how we view ourselves, what we want to produce, what we want to look like on the pitch. And then we've got culture, which is how we define those things, because obviously Gus grew up in a very different football culture than perhaps cultures here in Europe, for example. And I'm sure the German style might be very different for his interpretation or my interpretation and so on. And now we have a world of positionalism and relationalism and how that's all developing. Coaches will always dabble. Coaches will always try and play the next fad formation, whether that might be the Brighton 3-2 in the build-up and so on. So I think that in reality, it doesn't really hold out like that. There are certain clubs that I know of that absolutely demand everything. And I won't say the names, but one of them I know on the east coast of Spain basically decides even when the substitutes are for the managers, and they decide absolutely everything down to a fine tea. So that does exist, but it is quite rare. It is quite rare. And the reason it's quite rare is because if coaches don't feel like they're learning or improving, usually they'll just go. They'll just leave. They'll go, well, I'm not improving myself. And all the other clubs know that I'm not making any of the decisions here. So if I go to...
Sorry, but that's a contradiction that we have in football, because I had this discussion with so many presidents, sport directors and academy directors that they think that I'm against them, and I'm not against them. I'm trying to explain to them where we go, all of us. How many times you heard in football say, no, in this club, we don't try to win football games. We try to produce football players.
Yeah.
Now, when you do that 100%, you're going against the coach. Because I suppose that the coach doesn't want to be the coach of the under 12 for his life or the under 14 of his life. He wants to be coaching to start growing up. It happened to you, Chris. It happened to most because you want to become a professional coach.
Sure.
Now, you're telling a person who normally, I would say 90% or 90 plus of coaches, they want to improve in their jobs. Yeah, they want to get more money and get a future and get to the highest possible. No, you need to produce players. You don't have to win. But then if you don't win, then you are not a good coach and you're going to. So it's a contradiction in itself that brings problems into the club because you're 100%. Telling a coach to do one thing. They try. Obviously, they are under 15, they need to develop players, but at the same time, they need to win, so like that they can improve themselves. And then when they start that conflict, that's when I'm not the person that I'm able to coach kids, because I want to be looking only to win and maybe not so much about development. The players they develop as well winning. I'm not saying winning at any cost. I'm not talking about those sentences. I'm talking about when the players they start getting better and you start winning and the team start getting cohesion and you start getting the culture and identity and blah, 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 then the players they get better as well. You know, in a football team get better. When I went to Brighton, I had players that I never thought they would play in the Premier League. And they did, because there is a process. And they done the process in the League One, they done the process in the Championship, and then they arrive in the Premier League. And that's improvement the player, because the players, they improve. During that process, we need to win. Without winning, I was not there. So I know that it has to be a percentage, big, I respect the club, big percentage in terms of producing players, because that should be the aim of the academy. Now, they need to be very careful how much they push the coach to do that. Explain me your experience, not where you are now or what you think is happening down in there.
So I think what's happening is exactly what you're saying, and I can't fault it. You're right, of course. You have the coach who has their own personal ideas, whether that's style, whether that is the way that they believe certain actions should be completed, whether they believe, well, I want to play with this centre-back because I know he's less likely to make errors, but his potential is less high because of his physicality, for example, let's say. However, I do think that when we look at the best producers of players in world football, quite often they're not in an environment where winning is imperative for them. Now, let me explain what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
If we look at someone like Red Star Belgrade or Partizan in this part of the world in Serbia, who have for where they are and what they do, they produce very good footballers. Right, well, when they bring players through, they're slowly introducing them into the first team setup, whereby we're not putting all our eggs on you. We're not putting all our eggs on you. We're just slowly immersing you into the environment. And I think the generation from your experience, Gus, where so many people had soft skills, so many assistant managers would be the bridge between the players and the first team, and they would have this sort of combination of being able to put their arm around people, and people have real people skills because there was a lot more characters. We've lost that. We've lost that people skills, and as a result, a lot of second coaches now are the tacticians. If you look at, for example, Pep Linders, etc., I'm sure he has lots of people skills, but that's not what I'm trying to get at. So when you bring a player through and you go, for example, now the kid's in Barcelona, and you go, right, you've got to win. Well, you're going to limit their potential hugely because they can't make a mistake, because if they do, the game's lost because you're 18 or 16 in this kid's case. And I think that's the big difference for me. It's, yes, winning is very important, but do not place it all on the shoulders of your soon-to-be stars, because you'll just destroy them.
No, I agree with you. Me and Brighton, the second team, and listen, I never be so proud of my second team like in Brighton. And I was staying Monday until night, because it was Monday nights at that time, to go and watch. I couldn't miss a game when we play at home. And my idea was, I swear, okay, of course you want them to win because you want the coach to be happy, but the main thing was to see the basics. And we were playing. I remember playing, I don't know how many games, but without exaggerating, in 1 year, 15 games of Louis Dunky. Now he's the captain of Brighton. He was playing on Monday nights, freezing cold, horrible days, but he was playing, getting an angle, getting the ball, being comfortable on the ball, marking, doing the right thing, pushing it. He was like the leader of that second team. And he was obviously was playing to win, but it was good to see him doing the basics. So it will be easy for me, they were training with me a lot, to bring him into the team. Like you say, not slowly, but when it's needed. I had the central defenders, but you knew, okay, if I've got a problem here, I can count on him because I've been watching him progress. The problem is that I was not able to do in the other team. And that hurt me a little bit, that you get to a place where everybody's looking at you, oh, he's the coach of the first team. He's coming for us, he's coming to take my best player. But that's the aim of the academy, to get me through.
That's exactly one of the questions I want to direct the conversation, which is, now we have two different coaches at different levels that they should work together. In your experience, in both of your experience, how often do you work together? As you just said, Gus, some critics were feeling that you're going to see them to steal their players, or some Guses was coming to see your team and steal you. So what's the relationship in general? And if you can have an example.
From my point of view, sorry, Chris, to go first, is me, I'm open. Everywhere I go, most of the time, what I do is a meeting with the coaches from the 3 or 4 teams below me. Open, sit down, tell them what I'm going to do, how I want to play, what is my aim, discuss. If I see that there is interest, we have a second one where I bring some videos and we discuss actions, goals against, or whatever it is, to see them, what they think, how they think, because we're all different. And then try to go and see and support them and ask them. Then it's an idea of the door is always open. For example, my coach is coaching now in North County, Luke Williams, my coach at Brighton. Luke asked me one day, being the second coach, can I come every morning and sit down in your office just to listen? And I thought it was very clever. And I said, yeah, why not? You're part of the team. So it was not working with us on the pitch. It was the coach of the second team. But every morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, he will come into the office, sit down in there, listen to the discussion, listen to the why we're going to do this, why we're training this, what we need to look, what happened with the players, how I deal with a doctor, how I deal with the fitness coach. And it was there in like a coaching course. He didn't take everything from me because he's totally different character. I was at Brighton and we were one of the leading teams playing a certain meters of passes. We were in positions, Chris, and our passes, let's say a big percentage of passes, they were between 10 and 25 meters. And the team of Luke Williams, the second team of Brighton, the 90% of the passes, they were less than 10 meters. They were all very, very, very together, like more Barcelona, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, than my team. And he was sitting in my office listening to how we play, but that doesn't mean that he played exactly the same. It was not copying. It was taking information for him to create his style with the basics of what I needed from the player. I always say the same. My best course, with all respect to the FA that they're going to kill me, it was not the B level. It was not the A level. For me, it was my 2 years as an assistant manager. For me, it was spectacular. I was in every day. I was not making the decisions. The coach was making the decisions. I was seeing the reactions, good or bad, of the players. And I had the two opposite managers that you can have, Dennis Wise and Juan de Ramos, completely opposite. Then you get your own way and you learn how to deal with that. Me, I always open the door for the coaches below. But like I say, it's depending on the culture of the club and the type of manager you bring, that can have that link or is never there. It's something that I love it. I swear I love it. Because if I was a coach under 18, I would love to be that contact with the first team. That doesn't mean I will copy, but to listen to the coach, to see the training, to why you done this? Can I know why? Can you tell me why? Why? Because that's the reason. I didn't pay attention to training until I was 30 years old. I didn't pay, Chris. I was going to train as a football player. Train. What I need to do is 100-yard run. Don't ask.
I think that it really is culture dependent. For example, I know that in Ajax, all the coaches sit round and they have conversations with, including the first team. My experience and what I know about Spain is that the cantera, the pool of players, the under 18s and so on, even the C team are not really very connected with the B and the A team. There's a bit disconnect there here in Spain from what I know. That's good and it's bad. It's good and it's bad because the first team coach probably changes a lot, right? But the other coaches, they probably don't change as much. So you're creating consistency through the lines without having to look up to the station above. Obviously, the ideal is that the first team manager comes in, creates a dynasty. We would all love to see that. I think creates a dynasty, helps create an organization, and such as a Guardiola or a Klopp or Paisley, or I could go on, Alex Ferguson. However, I think in modern day football,
Yeah, it's not possible.
it's not really that possible.
Not possible.
I think when I go on, hopefully to be in Gus's position in the future, and I've got a lot to learn still, but I'm definitely gonna reach those heights one day. I will actively go out my way to spend time with the coaches at the youth levels, and not because I want to influence anything, just because I think that having someone like, if I was in Brighton, for example, and Gus walked through the door and just sat next to me and just went, let's have a conversation. Not spoke at me, but just said, let's have a conversation. The inspiration that gives is quite frankly incredible, and the unity that can create throughout the club, so that when someone sends a player up, it should be, yeah, you're gonna go and play for him, and he's brilliant, and I want you to run through walls for him. And that's the way it should be, because like Gus said, everything goes in one direction. And if a player goes up, if one of my players goes up, I've got a smile on my face like you wouldn't believe. And I walk past them and I give them a hug. I'll whisper something and then give them a hug and give them a pat, and then you're making a difference to this person. So I agree with Gus completely. It needs to be everyone working in one direction. However, that's difficult to achieve.
Look, I want to tell you one story which is important for me. I like to make the first step, but then you need the owner or the boss to send a line that's the way he wants it. Last year, my team in Greece, the under-19s, they qualified for the Euros, and I wanted to go and watch them, but they were playing in Malta. So I said, okay, I want to watch the first game, and depending how it goes, I'll go or no. And then the first game, we were like 5-0 at halftime down against Finland or whatever. Somehow the game finished 5-4. So second game, it was Spain. And I said, I'm not going to this game. I wait, and maybe I go to the third if we got a chance to qualify. And at halftime, we were 4-0 down. And I can promise that I don't know how many Greeks they were more upset than me. It was not my team. I never coached, and I didn't know one of the players, but I knew a few, but I didn't know them personally. Then I realized that, and this is an opinion, personal opinion, everybody in the last 10 years, it tried to coach only one way, because it's the way that you need to sell yourself to get a job, it's because the way that you can get a job is the way that everybody wants to hear how you play, everybody wants to do the same, which is only with the ball. I'm seeing a lack of defensive attributes, defensive attitude, defensive understanding, and blah, 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 which is tremendous. I decided to go and see the next training of under-19 in Greece. I didn't go to the last game, but then I'm in Greece and they're training somewhere up in the north in Volos, and I went to see one friendly game between the under-19s and one of the teams from the second division. And I asked the coach to talk before that session. And the only thing I say is, I don't pick the team. I don't pick the system. I don't know how you're going to play. That's all the coach. Respect the coach. Do everything the coach will say. I came here. I took a flight 1 hour from Athens to Salonika. I drove 2 hours and a half to the middle of the mountains in Volos to watch the game. If I see one of you not paying attention to defend, I'm going to change you. Not the coach. I'm going to take you out. Nil-nil. I think at the end it was a penalty. Maybe we lost 1-0 against IKB. So it frustrates me because the first team coach or the national team coach is there and they tell the players that they need to defend on the day they do it. But 2 weeks before, we were playing with the ball, only with the ball. And I'm telling you, only with the ball, everybody available with the ball, outstanding with the ball, but defending nothing. That's the link I want to have. They say that you sacred. I want the first team coach to be more there. Because if I'm playing in the second team as a player and the first team coach is there, that gives you something, That gives you the chance. I always say in football, it's one day, one chance. Take every game, every training session like it's your last chance. Because if that day somebody watching you, it changes your life. And if that day, the kids that you told me in the beginning, lazy, no attitude to train, is not performing the way they should, maybe his career is finished. And I think we talk a lot about it, but we don't do enough. I think it should be enough. And I'm a fighter. I don't stop until I achieve that, because if I renew my contract, one of the first topics that we're going to do in Greece, for sure. I'm not saying all the teams are going to play the same. No, I'm saying what you say, the basics of the game that we need to respect, and the responsibilities, we can call it per position, that we talked in a previous podcast. Steven, come on, tell us something.
Well, I'm
Fun.
interested. I'm interested.
It's a Spurs fan, so now it's a little bit, like last year when we were doing the podcast, it was really down. Now it's a little bit like, chest up, like, yeah, a little bit. I don't know.
Well, it's
Steven, I'm happy for you, mate. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, do you go from Mourinho to Conte now to Ange? It's a bit of a different kettle of fish when two managers are not interested in who's coming through in the youth system to someone that might actually do that. I think just with some of the things we discussed and just about the culture of players. So from a fan's perspective, we're always hearing stuff about the youth setup. So particularly, I would say I'm a Spurs fan. All these players, we get videos from the club of Jamie Donnelly and all these different players. They're the next big thing. Marcus Edwards, before he ended up at Sporting Lisbon, was the new Messi. We were told that was how good he was. And it's like, oh, come on, how many Messis, Ronaldos are there? But so in those terms of those players and the expectations, how is that managed by someone at your level? Because they're being talked about by fans. They're like, on podcasts, other Spurs podcasts I listen to, these players are being talked about, but they've not done anything in football as yet. So the expectations already on them at 16, coming up to 17, 18. And we've talked about before, the structure of football's changed. There's no reserve football. So they sort of jump from one thing, age group, into the first team, for instance, if they need to do so, which is happening at Spurs due to injuries. But how do you manage that at your under 16, under 18 level, the expectations of these players?
Yeah, the expectations and the modern culture that we live in is a huge problem, whereby a player could come up to the first team with relatively unknown, maybe in the 90s. It's not so much gonna happen these days. I think that the most important thing that we've really lost touch with is structure and discipline. The old cleaning the boots, doing your dues, respecting those above you, respecting your elders, basically helping out around the club. I think that we're starting to lose touch with these things because instead of treating the players like people, we treat them like assets. So a lot of clubs, they will treat a young player as an asset with the view that we know he's not that good, but we'll sell him to X because they'll probably give us money for them. If you look at a club like Benfica, how many times have we seen Benfica produce an incredible player who's the next? And they're okay, right? They're okay. They don't always produce world beaters. Sometimes they do, of course, but not always. So with that in mind, one of the things that I believe, which is a little bit old school, is treating players and basically humbling them on a day-to-day basis. Let me explain that, because that sounds a little bit strong and almost like I'm coming out with like a drill sergeant. No. So I work with players who are selected for their national teams at various levels. I work with players who are future stars of their countries without any shadow of doubt. And at all times, I always talk to these players honestly and to the point. I say to them, my only agenda is making you the best footballer you can be. That's my only agenda when I'm giving you instructions. Because you have to understand that if we are not winning because you're not defending in the transition, everybody's going to see that and be like, well, he's limited because he's not doing that. So therefore, that affects you, even though you think it's a team idea, when it is not. Because nobody is going to come in for a player who doesn't defend the transition and cost the team 2 goals if at the end of the day they only score 1 a game. And 1 a game is a lot, bear in mind. So when I communicate with players, I'm very, very to the point. I will say to them, what is it that we want to get to the end point, and how can we get there the most effectively? If a player comes back from injury, for example, I don't believe in treating them like they're made of glass. I believe putting them back in the fire, but with the proviso that, right, we're not going to do slide tackles today on Pablo, but that doesn't mean players can't shoulder barge him off the ball, etc. like that. That's just common sense. I also believe that players shouldn't be treated differently, no matter what the trajectory of that they have, because all of the top players at the very, very top have extreme self-discipline. They have diets that you wouldn't believe. They never touch chocolate. They're completely teetotal, the majority of them, and they have extreme self-discipline. So they have to be taught self-discipline on a day-to-day basis. They have to be taught that no, you don't do that because you want to. You do what is best in that moment for the team or for your personal attributes. For me, I think that we've lost, as I said previously, we've lost those skills, those soft skills to motivate, discipline, regulate, and at the same time progress a person very fast through their potential. And at the moment, we're just holding out for a 1v1 monster in the majority of the time.
In the same way, is that the same in the first team in international football?
It's a little bit more complicated than international football because the players are, for example, we had a striker in Greece who he played 5 games in the first team and they sold him to Chicago Fire. And now he's in Chicago and he's coming to play with under 21s, but you lost a little bit of contact and then it's a position which is occupied at the moment. So I would like the players to have the process that Chris was saying before. You get to the first team, maybe you play 20 minutes, maybe one game that the coach needs you and they start you, but then, you take them. Forget about the exceptional players. Okay, forget about the Rooneys, the Messi, the Ronaldo, the exceptional living behind. I'm talking about the good player that is going to make the first team. He needs to have a process. And having that process and growing up and getting there, and depending on him playing more or less, it gives the chance to the national team, in this case, to have a proper idea of the player. And at the national team at the moment, it looks like you have a big group to select players from, but in reality, in countries like in Greece, there is many teams that they don't play with Greek players. So the young players, they have little chance to progress. That's why there is only a few. Yeah, tell me, Chris. Yeah.
So let me just ask you a question on that point, Gus. So within when you're looking at a player, a young player, and you will look at their different attributes of what they have. Obviously, context is king, right? Within Greece, context is king, and I think we've got to always remember that. But where do you believe, as a coach, it's easier to give players liberty to express themselves, or we have to be more conservative? Or do you not take that into consideration when you're looking at the younger players?
I take in consideration because normally I play in a certain way that I need the player that is gonna, I don't know how you say, unbreak a defense or have the chance to produce. I got that. Look, I'm not too crazy about it, but I got to play the best way I understand football. The best way I understand, I got certain characteristics that the players they need to have. Obviously, you're not gonna have it, all of them. And I always put the same example. Nowadays, there's plenty of things about the goalkeepers. You're going to sign a goalkeeper or I'm going to bring a goalkeeper and everybody recommends, he's very good with his feet. So I say, okay, wait. We're talking about a goalkeeper. Let's start from the most important, no? Can he save it? Can he catch it? Can he control the box? Can throw crosses? Can communicate? Can he pass it? It's spectacular. Can he throw it well, quick? I mean, that's all attributes, but I start from the basics. So I go certain positions on the pitch when I need to give him freedom. But then I use the characteristics. For example, I go the right back that you probably know, George Baldock. George got an stamina that, okay, nowadays it's more common, but for a right back, it's extraordinary. I'm not going to stop him from going forward. When it's a player that he can go forward and back 50 times. I like that. It's a coincidence. I like that style of player, but I give him the freedom every time we got the chance to create superiority in his eye. But in the beginning, it was a believer of the quality of the player. I think the players now, because they didn't play football in the street, because they didn't decide for themselves, because they are telling him all the time when they're growing up, 2 touches, pass, they lost a little bit the ability of do something by themselves. So they want to be told what to do. But if I get a player which is special, that is able to decide, make decisions, go 1v1, have the freedom to create it, that we're always going to bring. And the national team is a little bit more complicated because of the system. That's why I would like to have that connection with the group of coaches below me, because I want them to don't forget about certain things that we need to have, that we cannot lose, that you say that we lost, okay? And that's another thing that we lose. We don't let the players play. You know what we used to say? I will listen to the coach 100%. I will do what the coach asks me 100%. But then I will play the game. I couldn't go into the pitch thinking, the coach told me, I play the game. Everybody in the game is different. Every game is different. Every action is different. Every situation is different. You cannot be thinking what the coach tells you to do all the time. You need to perform. You need to make decisions. And we're taking that from the game a lot now. I don't know why. I'm a believer of the other thing. Go on. Yes. Mariano or Steven? Ask questions to him, not me.
Yeah, no, so I actually got a question for both of you, but Chris, I'd like to ask you first. With you starting on your coaching path now, do you actually work with mentors, or, we talked about talking to coaches, the guy asked sitting in the office with Gus, do you have a mentor? Do you have someone that's sort of helping you, guiding you look up to? We've talked on here about everyone's
If you can't say it, if you can't say it, maybe you can say it.
We've talked here about
I
everyone
can
copying Pep and the
that.
style of football. Is it sort of that sort of thing more that you sort of look at someone that you will say, actually, I want to play heavy metal football, Klopp's my man, or I want to do like Pep. Angie's even doing jokes about copying Pep in the Premier League. But for someone, you coming through in your coaching career, is that sort of something that you'll think, actually, that's my way, that's the style? Or are you going to think, I'm doing everything my way?
Well, I think the idea of doing everything my way is a little bit ridiculous. It's all been done. Quite frankly, it's all been done. It's just reiterations of different ideas. I have a little bit of a strange situation in that, because I came to Spain and then I was working through my badges and so on and improved myself, doing my masters. My ability to network was absolutely awful. And I've admitted to that. Anyone who says to me, what's the one thing you need to improve on? It's meeting people, to be completely frank. It's meeting people, trying to connect with people, trying to put myself in.
You did quite well with us, eh? You did quite well.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Yeah,
Not bad, not bad.
Trying to put myself in environments which I really believe in as a person, where I can be vulnerable and just ask questions. The amount of times every week I have once a week I have a meeting with someone, whether that might be a professor of neuroscience, whether that might be a coach based in. I had a meeting with a coach based in Brazil recently where I was talking to them about juego funcional and the differences between that and the positionalism that what Gus is talking about, and creating robotic players who are not very creative but are just obsessed with breaking the next line. I don't have anyone, honestly, that I work with on a day or weekly basis where I feel that I could learn from, and I would love to have that. Honestly, I really, really, really would love to have that. I think that it brings so much value just to have someone who's had certain experiences, and then as a result, you can throw ideas with. I think it's incredible. I don't have that. In terms of coaches, I'm a big fan of, I watch a lot of Saki's training and Bielsa's ideas. A lot of these ideas, because I think that innovation and understanding those things is incredibly important. I'm a big fan of Emery, Villa. I think that he has a very clear idea. He's a very system orientated coach. But then again, I'm also obsessed with Fulminese at the moment, and the things that happen there in relation to how they get the players to interpret the situation, read the situation, react. And that's how we have players like, for example, Darwin Núñez, who looks like at times he's playing completely different football. It's because he is playing completely different football. He doesn't play with this positionalism. He's a reactive footballer who's alive to the situation. If you just ask him to run the channels again and again and again, it's not going to work. So I think that quite often I'm obsessed with those ideas. Then I also look to other sports such as boxing. Cus D'Amato, Mike Tyson's boxer, he created a trainer. I read a lot. I'm obsessed with learning, as you can probably see with the way I put myself across, hopefully. But I don't have anyone, especially being a British guy in Spain. It's not the same, unfortunately. And that's not a slight on Spain, but it's more likely that someone makes a joke about my skin being pale or me drinking too much than asking me to go for a coffee and talk about football.
Me, Stephen, what you asked him, remember what I told you, Stephen? Me, I started paying attention when I was 31. I was sitting in the restaurant, and the person who was next to me, he went on to be a manager. And then I went, wow, what happened here? Maybe that happened to me next year. So I started paying attention. In the beginning, it was a lot of what I wouldn't do if I become a manager. I didn't like that, write it down. And then I learned a lot with Dennis Wise and Juan de Ramos. And I'm totally different to both of them, but a lot, for good and for bad. Things that they've done very, very well, that I was impressed. And things that, it was uncomfortable, but you are the assistant manager and you need to support. What I do need, and I still haven't today, is an assistant coach who challenge me all the time. I got a guy play with me, Tarico. It was everywhere except in one job because of the pandemic. When it's no, it's no. And he tell me no. and I need to fight it, and I need to rethink it, and I need to go back and go, and sometimes even convince him, and sometimes we don't agree, and I had to make the decision, and I made the decision. And then depending on the consequences, we said, oh, I told you, okay, it was right. Because that made me think, and made me rethink, and made me, no, that doesn't mean that we disagree. I mean, we agree 95%. But it's important that every now and then when I got a doubt, he's very strong and very honest. And it's not because he goes against, it's because he believes in certain things, especially in defending, which is very strict. And that helped me a lot. I don't like the all me, me, yeah. What you want to, yeah. And everything is yes. Not yes, man, but yeah, everything is perfect, it's beautiful. No, something wrong, like I'm always improving, Chris. You don't stop learning. I can tell you. I finished a session with Greece before playing France, and I didn't like it at all. And I went to the hotel thinking, we cannot play like this. And I asked for the video, and I watched it, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. And I went, maybe I'm making a mistake here. Why you want to change with that feeling? Calm down, watch it again. I talked to a few players without them knowing, like how you feel yesterday, blah, 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 because we had the whole morning off, and we trained it again in the afternoon, and then we confirmed it and we played that way. And that's learning. I didn't do that in the beginning. In the beginning, it was like, this is my way. Like we say in the beginning, and when I play like this, I was not flexible enough or rethinking, except when Tano put me there.
Gus, can I ask you about your coaching staff? I'm not sure if I have asked this question before, but in terms of, there's a lot of managers and coaches now that are happy to move to jobs on their own and start again with staff. Do you feel that it's always good for you to have the same number two when you go to each job, or it just works out like that for you? How does that work?
Well, I went different ways. Look, when I started in Brighton, I went only with that, okay? And then when I went to Sunderland, I took everybody. We were 5. And then when I went to AEK, we went 3. And then we went to Betis and took the 5. And to China, we went at 5. In Bordeaux, I went only with Tano, because I'm very open to the stuff. I tell them all the time that, there is certain moments that is going to be possible, certain moments. No, it's not like we go the 5 or we don't go, because there is different circumstances in different countries. It's happening a lot that they allow you to bring 3 at least or 4, but there is places that are very specific where, I don't know, you cannot change the goalkeeper coach for whatever reason. I mean, it's happening a lot because he's the goalkeeper coach of the number 1. I like to have an understanding, because starting a game from zero with everybody is always a challenge, because you don't know how they're going to react, you don't know how they're going to support. I like as well giving the space. For example, more and more nowadays, when it's a warm-up, I'm not there, I'm away. I want the fitness coach to be the warm-up. Not my voice, the fitness coach voice. And then if we do something with the ball, or we do something like that, I leave the coaches to do it. I only go if I need that, there is not enough, whatever I'm looking for, no? And then when it's coming, the most important part of the practice, I'm getting involved a lot. It's me. It's what I call, I'm in charge, button, boom, everybody shut up, I'm in charge. And then again, at the end, we do something finishing or something special. I give a space as well to the coaches. So for that, you need to have an understanding. It's not easy. It's not like you arrive in pre-season and they're going to do it all the time. And it's not nice to be correcting people all the time, So I would prefer at least to have someone who I know, but then I'm open. And like I said, look, I had 4 different fitness coaches or 5. I had 3 or 4 or 5 goalkeeper coach, and I always try to involve them. And as soon as they have the chance, I say to them, if it's coming a good offer for you, take it. Don't wait for me, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to take you next time. And that open relationship made me stay in touch with all of them. And if I call tomorrow one that didn't work with me in the last 2 jobs, it's coming straight away. It's no problem. And I don't have any kind of regrets. If somebody left and then they lose the job and I need him, I call him back. It's not like I say, you left me. You left me because it was a great opportunity. And I will do the same. So that kind of relationship, it worked for me with my character. I know other coaches, they prefer to have their 5 and they don't move from their 5. And when somebody leaves, they don't want him back. Okay, it's different way. I need to feel calm with myself when they are there. And I'm seeing the training and they do it what I want, nothing else. The rest, I give them the chance to make an opinion on the session. When I think it's something good, I put it in. When I don't like it, or I need to do something, I say, no, today, no, bang. Every now and then, one of my assistants now send me an idea for a training, and he put me at the end always, I know you're going to change everything, but, go on, no problem. But it's an idea which I understand the idea, why he wants to do it, and I say, okay, yes, no problem, let's do it, I like it, or no, I need to do this and this. We go not enough time, so I need to be very specific in the national team. Now, when you have every week, it's different. Every week we can plan it. Me, I like to plan in advance as well, and that's a problem, because, in football, you said it before, Chris, Can you really plan now? How many coaches in England can plan now for the end of January? They need to win Saturday and Boxing Day. Yeah, two games, no?
No, two coaches.
Two coaches, yeah.
One.
Yeah.
The rest...
Me, that what I wanna dream to have the job that I had at Brighton. I knew, Chris, I was in October and I knew that in January I will be there. And that's the best feeling you can have. And it was not only about results, it was about relationship, about the way we were working. So you can ask one player to the chairman, and you know you're going to work 2 months for one player or two players, and that's it, and you're going to have it. Anyway, last question. No, this is the most interesting question for Chris, I think. How much input you put in the psychology part of your studies into the players? And I mean, not only in the session, but also in the individual work. If you do, I have, because sometimes we separate psychology from football. Normally, yeah. And I had in my career, I had a psychologist in my last club in Tottenham, and as a coach, I had only once. It was in Chile, and there were things that I loved, and I think that there were other things that were very difficult for me to deal with. The balance is, it's tough. But I suppose that with time you can bring the balance. But your experience as a coach and the psychologist part, how do you use it?
So, in my vision, if it's not practical, it's not useful. So there's a lot of smoke in psychology. A lot of the time, unfortunately, whenever you see the sports psychologists, there's some very famous ones. You read the article, it's very, very well written, lovely words, very nice pictures. And then I find myself, yeah, but where's the practical application of what you're talking about? The difference, what I do, is that primarily the players don't know that there's a psychologist there. Because as soon as a player or a person thinks I'm being manipulated, even if it's for a good reason, because manipulation can sometimes be good. For example, Gus, if I manipulated you into being tomorrow the coach of Manchester City, you wouldn't throw a cup at my head and say, how dare you manipulate this situation? So manipulation is just changing things in a way that I deem right. So, but if a person believes that they're being manipulated, they will instantly put the brakes on it. In a training session, when you look at me, and now I have my coaching badges, I am a coach, I define myself as a coach. But in a coaching session, you wouldn't see anything different. From the outside eyes, it wouldn't look any different. However, when you are saying something to a player as a national team coach, you'll understand this more than most. Well, does he understand what I just said? Not only does he understand what I just said, does he understand the concepts that I wanted to put across? Because language is everything. I remember sitting down and having a conversation about Beckham's crossing in a recent documentary to a friend of mine who's a coach, and talking about whip balls or searching balls or floated balls. And he looked at me like,
why is that?
You mean centros? Centros is crosses for everybody who's listening. And I was like, yeah, I do, but we have lots of words for the same concept. So by having those words, it means that people who are listening to them, they understand concepts in different ways. And that's the same in Spanish as well. La pausa. Well, that concept doesn't exist really in the English language. We don't really have a word for it. So how many times do you see in a transition an English player just decide to stop? You don't see it because the concept doesn't exist in the language. So therefore, that's a psychological situation where maybe I would be talking to you, Gus, and I'd be like, I can see that it's not that he doesn't understand it, it's that he doesn't grasp the word. And then as a coach, it gives the other coach the ability to go, right, okay, fantastic. But to everyone on the outside, it just looks exactly the same. It looks exactly the same, but I can see the football and I can see the psychology in unison, and I can say, well, no, he's just not following instructions because he doesn't believe them. Okay, now we can attack that rather than thinking he doesn't understand or she doesn't understand. So my vision of psychology is that you have to understand what's happening before you can really get involved. And I think that that's my advantage, is because I have the coaching and I have the psychology. So therefore, if we're talking about something like La Corta, which for people listening means to run the channel basically and create a distracting run, if that concept has never entered that player's mind, the coach is going to need somebody to get that across in an efficient and really, really intelligent way. And because I work with players all throughout the world, I can do that in a way that I believe is quite unique.
Interesting, Steven? Interesting.
Very, 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 yeah.
Okay, well, we can wrap this up, but
You're gonna have the longest podcast ever, Mariano.
if
But you
we
can cut.
continue,
You need to cut a few things.
yeah, no, if we continue, we will be obviously the longest, but actually it creates at the same time a great opportunity to do it again, and we continue. I had a few questions, something that you said, Gus, and I'm sure Chris can elaborate more from a psychology coach point of view, which is this ability of being yourself from the beginning. You take decisions because you play, and you are not being told, and you're not being trained from very early ages. So that time to leave you space to think your own football team, that actually for me is very, very, very interesting. Even my English accent is changing to Chris accent. It's terrible. But yeah, we can continue this. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for
Thank you,
contacting
Chris.
us.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
very
your knowledge,
much.
and thank you, Gus. Thank you, Steven. Next
Thank
time
you.
we have to link also this to the fans as well. So for them to actually to talk to them in a way they can get the concepts in order to understand football better.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's very interesting what you're saying at the end, Chris, just with the positioning and understanding. The whole point of this was we wanted to understand from a fans. Mariano and I used to go and watch football, and fans talk about football while you're watching it, and you're like, what is he talking
Yes.
about? And it's like, does he actually understand what he's watching in front of him? And that's where this sort of grew
It was
from.
so annoying.
But for Steven, for Christian, no, I remember clearly when we were leaving Spurs and winning a game, maybe 2-0, and Mariano would jump on my car, and because we won 2-0, fun, he would say, "Hey, good today," and I would say, "No, today was terrible," and he would go, "What? Terrible, terrible." And he would listen to me for 30 minutes until I drop him in the underground, thinking, we won, we were good.
Actually,
then,
that's the way I learn football.
No, but it's just because you were on the pitch and you explain what happened and what the manager planned and what we didn't do and how somehow we won the game. So he will go, wow. And then he will ask me next time, how did you play today? How did we play today? I said, no, today was good. But that's the idea of the podcast, that sometimes
now you know, Chris, why I invite these two.
Yeah, we cannot explain everything, but at the same time, they want to know.
Yeah. I think that, but I think that a lot of the times when people talk about these type of things, they unfortunately try to look intelligent when the reality is that I could sit here and use lots of big words, but what does that prove? If you can't get it down to a simple level and then deliver it, then for all your intelligence, you're actually a moron.
True.
So I do think that there is a lot of interest, especially in fans, if you can deliver exactly what the idea is, like, for example, substitutions. I think that's a really interesting point about how the manager's philosophy on it, how he's managing the personalities, how he's managing the board, how he's managing the minutes, how he's perhaps taking into consideration the contracts, because if a player plays a certain amount of minutes, they might get a bonus. So I think that's really interesting. Really, really interesting. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, boys.
Okay, bye, guys.
Ciao.
Cheers, fellas. Thank you very much. Ta-da.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the series, leave a winning review or a 5-star rating on the platform you're listening on. And do not forget to check our website at www.12asintheword-man-academy.com and let us know what would you like to know. If you would like to sponsor this podcast, please email us to sponsors@the12manacademy.com. See you next time at the 12 Man Academy.